What's going on, guys? It's the Bad Wolf. Do we have a humdinger for you guys today? Hmm. Protein, nutrient, vitamin, essential minerals, breakfast, all around drink. Um, Gotta stay healthy, right? So this particular video is about the Social Security Administration number. So your Social Security number, all right? So this is going to be a longer video. Okay, because we're going to break down something that most people have never heard. We're going to go into what do the numbers mean. All right. Now, of course, this is not like super secret technology or whatever else. It's just things that most of you guys will never look up, find, or whatever else. So I'm just bringing you to that. All right. But if anybody out there has any good tidbits and, information they want to share with the wolf, feel free to send it to me. But remember, as always, nothing considered top secret. All right, we don't want nobody getting into trouble for nothing like that. So we don't deal with that. But if you do have some things that you want to share with me, tips, tricks, techniques, or whatever else from the inside, feel free to email me. Vet the information, show me where it makes sense and why. If you want me to keep it private just for me, as many people do, just indicate that in the email. Otherwise, if you want me to share it, we will launch it as educational information only, but make sure it makes sense. You can vet it, whatever else. All right. So, without further ado, here is the Social Security Administration information. All right. We're going to talk about, I'm going to have my lovely AI assistant speak for me because she has a way better voice than I do. But we're going to cover the creation, what the numbers mean, the databases, all that good jazz, everything you wanted to know and then some. So, like I said before, let's get to it. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day. I wish you guys nothing but positive energy and light. Um, Here, I got to get this all geared up. Okay. All right, there we go. Don't forget to check out my backup channel, the Badwolf Media channel. Um, and blacksite32.com or badwolfunincorporated.com. All right. So let's get going. Do 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 do.
The Social Security number, SSN, was created in 1936 for the sole purpose of tracking the earnings histories of U.S. workers, for use in determining Social Security benefit entitlement and computing benefit levels.
Now you notice in there it didn't say anything at all about taxes, right? This is why we now know that the Social Security number can be used for taxable or tax exempt as a national when done properly, but it can also be used as a taxable identifier by making a revocation, or excuse me, an election. A revocation is after the fact because you're taking back something that was given, but we all made elections. It doesn't say it was created for tax purposes, though it can be used for it. You have the ability to offer to make an election for it to be taxed. State citizens and nationals are Native Americans or nationals of the United States, and we are tax exempt on our lawful earnings on our labor. U.S. citizens, which are for profit corporations and people of the District of Columbia, U.S. citizens are taxable or taxpayers because they're for profit and they're foreign legally to the United States of America. So one side of your identity, the national, is de jure, lawful, and the other side is de facto, U.S. citizen, and legal. Two separate jurisdictions. So as a Native American, you are tax exempt. Feel free to watch my other videos titled How to Fill Out a W-8BN or IRS Form 673, things of that nature. Without further ado, I'm going to let this read all the way through. I will briefly make commentary as I'll be listening off camera. If I hear anything good, I'll jump in. I've already gone through this for the most part, but I will be listening just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So let's go.
Levels. Since then, use of the SSN has expanded substantially. Today, the SSN may be the most commonly used numbering system in the United States. As of December 2008, the Social Security Administration, SSA, had issued over 450 million original SSNs, and nearly every legal resident of the United States had one. The SSN's very universality has led to its adoption throughout government and the private sector as a chief means of identifying and gathering information about an individual. How did the SSN come to be, and why has it become an unofficial national identifier? This article explores the history and meaning of the SSN and the Social Security card, along with SSA's SSN master data file, generally known as the numismat. The article also traces.
Now understand that there are two types of numismat. There's the one that you can get from your local, and then there's the one that you have to special order, which I'm still waiting on, much like everything else I've ordered from the government that they don't seem to ever want to send me, guys. I know you guys watch my videos too. And then there's the master numismat that I made a video on. Now, why would that be important? Gem drop, because hint, hint, everything on your master file will show anybody, and everybody, and every entity that has used your social. Your social is a debit card to the Sestake Trust. So all I will say is this. People have won lawsuits and gotten things paid off by understanding that certain people are double dipping or have dipped into their trust through their name and social without their permission. I'll give you guys that. Now let's keep going.
Traces how use of the SSN has expanded since its introduction and the steps SSA has taken to enhance the integrity of the SSN process. Crafting the SSN. At its inception, the SSN's only purpose was to uniquely identify U.S. workers, enabling employers to submit accurate reports of covered earnings for use in administering benefits under the new Social Security program. That is still the primary purpose for the SSN. However, creating the SSN scheme and assigning.
Did you hear that? They just told you that that's the major aspects. That's it. Just tracking the U.S. work, identifying U.S. workers. I didn't hear anything about taxing. Did you? This is on their site. Social Security, Office of Retirement and Disability. Does it say tax on there? Does it, do you see any federal, state? So this is for retirement and disability. Y'all don't even, people out here telling me I don't know what I'm talking about or what I'm doing. Little kids throwing rocks at glass houses or into caves and don't know there's dragons in there, or they do know and they just want a reaction. And they want to cry when they get their they get, you know, lit up by the dragon. Remember, everything said here is education and entertainment purposes only. Remember your favorite non-belligerent, non-combatant, treaty with the United States, Lord of Leviticum. Let's keep going.
Assigning SSNs to U.S. workers was no easy task. Passage
Keep going.
of the Social Security Act in August 1935 set in motion a huge effort to build the infrastructure needed to support a program affecting tens of millions of individuals. Many said the task was impossible. SSA 1952, SSA 1965, 26. Employers were to begin to deduct payroll taxes from workers' wages in January 1937, giving the agency little time to establish the SSN process. Point 1. Besides clarifying program policy, the agency needed to hire and train employees, 7,500 by March 1938, set up facilities, develop public education programs, and create an earnings tracking system. Course in 1938, 6. Establishing the Social Security infrastructure was impeded for 3.5 months by the lack of funds due to a filibuster of the 1936 Deficiency Bill, a government-wide appropriation bill similar to current omnibus budget reconciliation bills, by Senator Huey Long, Democrat, Louisiana. The Roosevelt administration circumvented this obstacle by engineering a Works Progress Administration, WPA, allotment of $112,610 from the Department of Labor and by borrowing staff from the demobilizing National Recovery Administration, the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, and the National Youth Administration. On February 9, 1936, Congress finally passed the Deficiency Bill containing the fiscal year 1936 appropriation for the Social Security Board, precursor of the SSA, and Roosevelt signed it on February 11. As late as March 15, 1936, there were still only 5 employees of the Social Security Board's Bureau of Old Age Benefits, including the director and his assistant, McKinley and Fraze. 1970, 18, 28, and 49. Additionally, the U.S. Supreme Court declared the Agricultural Adjustment Act invalid in January 1936, raising the possibility that the Social Security Act might also be declared unconstitutional. McKinley and Fraze. 1970, 22-23, SSA 1952. It would not be until May 1937 that a series of Supreme Court decisions cemented the constitutionality of the Social Security Act, SSA-NDA. One of the first steps in administering the Social Security Act was to devise a means to track the earnings of each individual, as Social Security benefit computations consider a worker's earnings from 1937 on. Why didn't the Social Security Board just use an individual's name and address as the identifier? The deficiency of such a scheme was already well known. A 1937 publication recounts, a recent news account states that the Fred Smiths of New York City have had so much trouble in being identified by their creditors, the courts, and even their friends, that they have joined together in forming the Fred Smiths, Incorporated, to serve as a clearinghouse for their identification problems. Some government agencies, such as the U.S. War and Navy Departments, the Veterans Administration, for paying pensions and for adjusted compensation certificates, and the Post Office Department, for postal savings depositors, used fingerprints for identification. However, the use of fingerprints was associated in the public mind with criminal activity, making this approach undesirable. Wyatt and Wandel, 1937, 45-47. A numbering scheme was seen as the practical alternative. Thus, the Employer Identification Number, EIN, and the SSN were created. Today we take the 9-digit composition of the SSN as a given, but in 1935 and 1936 many other schemes were considered. In early
That means before then, they didn't have anything. So you were entitled to that because that's your privacy. And they decided, hey, I think we can make a little money on this too.
Early November 1935, the Social Security Board adopted an identifier composed of 3 alphabetic characters representing geographic areas and 5 numeric characters. However, the board made this decision without consulting other federal agencies. The U.S. Employment Service uses the Census Bureau, the Central Statistical Board, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics all used numeric symbols without alphabetic characters since most standard statistical machines used this scheme. With alphabetic symbols, these agencies, as well as many private companies, would have had to buy new machines. Only 2 companies manufactured tabulating machines using a combination of alphabetic and numeric characters, and the government had previously brought suit against them under the Sherman Antitrust Act for dividing market territory between them. McKinley and Fraze 1970, 320 to 322. The board called a meeting of all interested agencies to discuss the numeration issues. Point 2 in a November 1935 report, a subcommittee of this interdepartmental group proposed 3 alternatives. A 9-digit number consisting of a 4-digit serial number, a 2-digit year of birth indicator, and a 3-digit number indicating the geographic area of registration. An 8-digit number with a 5-digit serial number and a 3-digit geographic indicator, or a 7-character version consisting of 4 digits and 3 alphabetic characters, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 322. On December 17, 1935, the board approved the 9-digit option, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 323. The board planned to use the year one attained age 65 as part of the SSN, thinking that once an individual attained age 65, the SSN would be reassigned to someone else. But at a meeting on January 23, 1936, the unemployment compensation delegates objected to the use of digits to signify age because they thought a number of workers would falsify their age. As a result, a new scheme adopted by the board on February 14 consisted of a 3-digit area code, a 2-digit month of birth, and a 4-digit serial number. Finally, on June 2, 1936, the board decided to keep the 9-digit scheme, although using the 4th and 5th digits to represent the month of birth was abandoned. Instead, those 2 digits would be a group number that could be used to maximize the utility of mechanical equipment and to verify the accuracy of punch cards. This scheme would permit the pre-numbering of registration forms and was capable of expansion to nearly 1 billion accounts, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 342 to 344. The numbering scheme would also facilitate storing the applications since the agency's files were organized by region as well as alphabetically. Deconstructing the SSN. As a result of the June 1936 decision, the current SSN is composed of 3 parts. The first 3 digits are the area number. The next 2 digits are the group number. The final 4 digits are the serial number. Area number. The 3-digit area number is assigned by geographic region. In 1936, the Social Security Board planned eventually to use area numbers to redistribute work to its 12 regional centers to serve workers in those areas. 1 or more area numbers were allocated to each state based on the anticipated number of SSN issuances in the state. 3 Prior to 1972, the numbers were issued to local offices for assignment to individuals. It was thought this would capture information about the worker's residence. So, until 1972, the area number represented the state in which the card was issued. Barron and Bamberger 1982, 29. Generally, area numbers were assigned in ascending order beginning in the Northeast and then moving westward. For the most part, people on the East Coast have the lowest area numbers and those on the West Coast have the highest area numbers. However, area numbers did not always reflect the worker's residence. During the initial registration in 1936 and 1937, businesses with branches throughout the country had employees return their SS5 application for account number to their national headquarters, so these SSNs carried the area number where the headquarters were located. As a result, the area numbers assigned to big cities, such as New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and Chicago, were used for workers in many other parts of the country, McKinley and Phrase 1970, 373. Also, a worker could apply in person for a card in any Social Security office, and the area number would reflect that office's location, regardless of the worker's residence. Since 1972, when SSA began assigning SSNs and issuing cards centrally from Baltimore, Maryland, the area number has been assigned based on the zip code of the mailing address provided on the application for the original Social Security card. The applicant's mailing address may not be the same as the place of residence. Some exceptions to the general east to west, ascending order area numbering scheme exist. Sequence 700 through 728 was assigned to railroad workers until July 1963. 586 was divided among American Samoa, Guam, the Philippines, Americans employed abroad by American employers, and, from 1975 to 1979, Indochinese refugees. 580 was assigned to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Sequences 581 through 584 and 596 through 599 were also assigned to Puerto Rico. Sequence 577 through 579 was assigned to the District of Columbia. Sequences 587 through 588 and 589 through 595 were assigned to Mississippi and Florida, respectively, for use after those states exhausted their initial area number allotments. Sequence 729 through 733 has been allocated to the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, for SSNs issued through the Enumeration at Entry, EAE, program, described below. No SSNs with an area number in the 800s or 900s, or with a 000 area number, have been assigned. No SSNs with an area number of 666 have been or will be assigned. SSA has many years' worth of potential SSNs available for future assignment. However, because of population shifts, SSA now faces an imbalance in the geographic allocation of area numbers. Some states have a current allocation of SSNs that will last for many years, while others have a pending shortage. As a result, given present rates of assignment and existing geographic allocations, several states currently have fewer than 10 years' worth of SSNs available for assignment. In a July 3, 2007, Federal Register notice, SSA solicited public comment on a proposal to change the way SSNs are assigned, SSA 2007b. Under this proposal, SSA would randomly assign SSNs from the remaining pool of available numbers, and the first 3 digits would no longer have any geographic significance. SSA contends that doing so would ensure a reliable supply of SSNs for years to come, and would also reduce opportunities for identity theft and SSN fraud and misuse. SSA plans additional discussion with other government entities and the private sector before implementing any change. Group number. The group number, the 4th and 5th digits of the SSN, was initially determined by the procedure of issuing numbers in groups of 10,000 to post offices for assignment on behalf of the Social Security Board's Bureau of Old Age Benefits. The group numbers range from 01 to 9900 is not used, but for administrative reasons, they are not assigned consecutively. Within each area number allocated to a state, the sequence of group number assignments begins with the odd-numbered group numbers from 01 to 09, followed by even group numbers 10 through 98, then even numbers 02 through 08, and finally odd numbers 11 through 99.4. Serial number. The last 4 digits of the SSN are the serial number. The serial number represents a straight numerical series of numbers from 0001 to 9999 within each group. Serial number 0000 is not assigned. Designing the Social Security card. Even at the inception of the program, the Social Security Board understood that individuals would need to have a token that would provide a record of the number that had been assigned to them. This token would help employers accurately report an individual's earnings under the program. The board first considered a small card similar to a credit union or trade union card, but some objected that it was too flimsy. Alternatively, a 3/4 x 2 7/8 metal card was proposed by a manufacturer of such cards. It was estimated that it would have taken 250 tons of metal for initial registration. The arguments in favor of the metal card were its permanence, accuracy, records could be imprinted from the embossed token, and economy, because of the imprinting capability. Still, in early June 1936, the board decided to use a small paper card, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 327 and 329. In October 1936, the Social Security Board selected a design submitted by Frederick E. Happel, an artist and photo engraver from Albany, New York, for the original Social Security card, for which Happel was paid $60.50. The board placed an initial order for 26 million cards. In late 1937, a second version was adopted, and a version just for replacement cards was adopted in 1938, SSA 1990-1. Since 1976, the design of original and replacement Social Security cards has been the same. In all, over 50 designs have been used from 1936 to 2008. All versions remain valid since it would be cost-prohibitive to replace all cards previously issued. Over time, as the use of the SSN expanded for other purposes, SSA recognized that changes were necessary to protect the integrity of the card. SSA has taken measures to prevent counterfeiting of the card, and a counterfeit-resistant version is now used for both original and replacement cards. Steps taken by SSA to improve the card are detailed later. Deciding on application data. There was also considerable discussion in 1936 about the types of information to collect as part of the registration. Generally, SSA collected the information needed to uniquely identify and accurately report an individual's earnings covered under the new Social Security program. Race was considered a necessary piece of information for actuarial purposes because of differences in life expectancy among different races. However, the board decided to use the term color rather than race on the original Form SS5 application for an SSN, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 325 to 326. The original 1936 version of the SS5 requested the following information: employee name, employee address, name of current employer, employer address, age of employee, date of birth, place of birth, sex, color. U.S. Employment Service uses registration card number, if applicable. Date and place of previously completed an SS5, if applicable. Completion date for current SS5. Signature, SSA 1990. Registering the nation's employers and employees. Although issuing SSNs is still a large workload for SSA, one rarely thinks about the major undertaking it was to register workers for the first SSNs. Initial estimates were that 22 million SSNs would be issued immediately, with 50 million ultimately to be issued, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 15. In fact, 35 million SSNs were issued in the first 8 months of the registration effort. The Social Security Board estimated it would also need to assign identifying numbers to 3.5 million employers during this same time, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 309. Assigning responsibility for the vast registration process was a real problem. Debate shifted back and forth over whether the board's Bureau of Old Age Benefits could handle the work. The board first approached the USs about assuming the registration workload, but in early May 1936 USs declined because President Roosevelt was hoping for an upswing in industrial production that autumn, and USs wanted its personnel to concentrate on its job placement service. The Census Bureau also declined, citing legal restrictions on the disclosure of its information to other agencies and confidentiality promises to the public that census information would be used for statistical purposes only. McKinley and Frey's 1970, 338 to 339. In June 1936, the Social Security Board decided that its Bureau of Old Age Benefits would handle the registration and that the registration process would begin after the November 3, 1936, presidential election, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 29. In May, the Executive Committee of the Interdepartmental Committee on Enumeration had recommended that the Bureau could handle the registration by setting up 202 field offices and hiring 12,000 to 16,000 employees. The board estimated that these 202 field offices would cover approximately 67% of registrants. On July 17, 1936, the Social Security Board's regional directors were told that 600 Bureau field offices would be opened by November, that SSN assignment would begin about November 15, and that registration would be completed within 60 days. Also in July, the board talked to the Post Office Department about assigning post office personnel to assist in cities where the board would not yet have field offices to handle the registration, McKinley and Fraze 1970. 342 to 347. However, difficulties in recruiting personnel and setting up offices would make it impossible for the Bureau to handle the workload. As of September 30, 1936, Bureau of Old Age Benefits employees numbered only 164, Corson 1938, 6. Fortunately, the board was able to enlist the Post Office Department to issue SSNs, signing an agreement on September 25, 1936. The Post Office Department had 45,000 facilities and over 350,000 employees at that time, Wyatt and Wandel 1937, 52. The Social Security Board also enlisted the Treasury Department to assure employer cooperation. Final Treasury regulations, published in the Federal Register on November 6, 1936, required employers to file Form SS-4, Employer's Application for an EIN, with the Post Office not later than November 21, 1936, and employees to file Form SS-5, Employee's Application for an SSN, not later than December 5, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 15 and 360. However, delays in getting registration started made these deadlines moot. The Social Security Board's Informational Service, established in January 1936, prepared a publicity campaign at mid-year to encourage employers and workers to complete the application forms, but did not plan to distribute the material until after the November 3 election. However, the board accelerated the publicity release in response to a September effort to discredit the program launched by Alf N. Landon, the Republican candidate for president. Also that year, many employers, in conjunction with Landon and the Republican Party, began stuffing payroll envelopes with leaflets against the Social Security Act and the required deductions from employee wages. The Social Security Board was so alarmed that the chairman, John G. Wynant, resigned in order to campaign in defense of the Social Security Act. In addition, in October 1936, the board released a film called We the People and Social Security along with a 4-page pamphlet entitled Security in Your Old Age, 6. It is estimated that some 4 million people saw the film and nearly 8 million of the pamphlets were distributed by Election Day, McKinley and Fraze 1970. 357 to 358. On November 6, the campaign to encourage employers and employees to register began. A series of press releases outlined the procedure for assigning SSNs and carried sample forms SS-4 and SS-5, as well as a Social Security card specimen. The campaign included 3 releases on old age benefits in 24 languages distributed to the country's foreign language press. The Associated Press, the United Press, the Hearst Chain, and many individual papers ran a series of articles on old age benefits and registration for weeks at a time. During the November and December initial registration period, there were also 12 nationwide radio broadcasts by well-known individuals and a host of local broadcasts arranged by the 56 skeletal field offices then in place. Over 3 million posters 7 were distributed, 50 million more pamphlets were dispersed, and 3 additional newsreel trailers were shown to some 42 million people, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 364 to 366. The registration process was largely directed by the local postmasters. The first task for the postman was to make up lists of employers on their routes. Their effort resulted in a list of 2.4 million employers, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 344 to 345 and 368. Beginning November 16, 1936, the post offices sent Form SS4s to employers based on the lists they had compiled earlier that month. Along with information about the business establishment, employers were asked for the number of workers they employed. The mail carriers collected the completed SS4s a week or two later. Based on SS4 information, the post offices delivered Form SS5s to the employers the following week for distribution to employees, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 368. Employees were permitted to return the completed SS5 application either to the employer, to any labor organization of which the employee was a member, to the letter carrier, to the post office by hand, or to the post office via mail. Wyatt and Wandel, 1937, 54. This last possibility caused another round of negotiations between the Social Security Board and the Post Office Department about whether return penalty privilege, requiring no postage, applied. Postal regulations stated that this privilege could only be used if an individual was not required by law to submit the information. The board argued that no postage was required as there was no law requiring employees to obtain an SSN. At the same time, however, the board was requesting the Treasury Department to issue regulations mandating employees to obtain account numbers. In the end, the board...
Did you hear that? No postage was required as there was no law requiring employees to obtain a Social Security number. Now, I don't know if that has been changed, but as far as I know, it has not been changed. So if there's no law requiring you to get a Social Security number, yeah, just think about that for a moment.
Board got it both ways. The Post Office Department agreed to accept returned SS5s without postage on October 8, 1936, and the Treasury Department issued the regulations making the SSN mandatory on November 6, 1936, McKinley and Frey's 1970, 351 to 352 and 360. Even at this early time, the public was concerned about privacy and confidentiality issues. Many employees were anxious to know how the information on the SS5 would be used. The Social Security Board issued releases at various times assuring the public that the information on the application would be kept confidential, with access limited to government employees for whom job duties under the Social Security Act required it. Wyatt and Wandel, 1937, 57. In June 1937, the Social Security Board would issue its very first regulation, formalizing its pledge of confidentiality for information collected and maintained. The work of the Social Security Board to reassure the public was complicated by the actions of some employers, who circulated additional forms along with the SS5. These extra forms requested information such as nationality, religion, education, and union affiliation. On February 26, 1937, the board issued a press release warning employers against distributing unauthorized questionnaires that appeared to be required by the Social Security Board. Wyatt and Wandel, 1937, 57. Of the 45,000 post offices then in existence, 1,017 first-class offices were designated as typing centers to assign the SSNs, along with 57 central accounting post offices to assign SSNs for the second, third, and fourth-class post offices within their area. McKinley and Frey's 1970, 368. The Social Security Board supplied these centers with Office Record Form OA 702, in blocks of 1,000, with the account number pre-printed. For each registrant, postal employees typed the information from the SS5 onto the pre-numbered OA 702 in duplicate. Each OA 702 had a detachable portion on which the employee's name was typed and then returned to the employee, the Social Security card. The post office mailed the completed Social Security cards to the employer, unless the employee had taken the SS5. to the post office in person and waited for the typed card. Each completed card was accompanied by an informational circular briefly explaining the provisions of Title II, Old Age Benefits, and Title 18, the Social Security Tax, of the Social Security Act, Wyatt and Wandel 1937, 54 and 58. The post offices sent the completed SS5 and the corresponding OA 702 forms in blocks of 500 to the Bureau of Old Age Benefits Records Office in Baltimore, where the SSN master files were to be kept. The post offices, and later the Bureau's field offices, kept carbon copies of the OA 702 to use should an individual request a replacement card, Wyatt and Wandel 1937, 58. The publicity campaign and the Post Office Department's efforts resulted in over 22 million completed applications as of December 22, 1936, 28 days after the initial distribution of employee applications. Wyatt and Wandel 1937, 62. During the first 4 months of the registration campaign, nearly 26 million SSNs and more than 2.6 million EINs were assigned. Course in 1938, 3. In September 1936, when the Post Office Department signed the agreement to handle the initial registration, the board had planned for the Bureau of Old Age Benefits to have 554 field offices set up to take over the enumeration workload in January 1937. However, hiring field staff had to await the results of the examination for Administrative Officer, Civil Service test, given in August 1936. The resulting register was not made available to the board until December 1936, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 129. So in November 1936 the board instead assigned headquarters staff to 56 Bureau field offices, covering all but one of the cities where the Post Office Department had set up its central accounting offices. These 56 Bureau offices primarily answered questions and directed applicants to the post offices. McKinley and Fraze 1970, 34-35 and 369. The board twice had to ask the post office to extend its handling of the SSN applications, first through March 1937 and then through June 1937, before the Bureau of Old Age Benefits could take over. Effective July 1937, Bureau field offices, still numbering only 175 with 1,702 total employees, took over the enumeration workload from the post offices. Swinshire 1952, 90, SSA 1965, 25. By that time, some 35 million SSNs had been issued at a cost of $5.7 million. SSA 1990, 1, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 372. And still the job was not finished. In July 1937 alone, Bureau field offices issued some 1.9 million additional SSNs, McKinley and Fraze 1970, 368 to 373. Even with field office employees working evenings and Saturdays and with managers and assistant managers, anyone who was available, pounding away at typewriters, the Bureau had to set up additional typing centers in its 12 regional offices to help with the workload. SSA 1985, 10, SSA 1965, 32, SSA 1952. Not all U.S. workers obtained SSNs during the initial registration period. This was because the original Social Security Act had excluded some types of employment from coverage, such as agricultural workers, domestic servants, casual labor, maritime workers, government employees, and the employees of philanthropic, educational, and similar institutions. The self-employed were also excluded from coverage. 70 years ago, these exempt workers comprised about 40% of the working population. These groups were not covered primarily because of the administrative difficulty in collecting taxes and obtaining accurate wage reports. Department of Treasury 1947, 1, DeWitt, Beeland, and Berkowitz 2008, 4. Initially, only employees working in covered employment and aged 64 or younger were eligible to obtain an SSN. However, almost from the start, state unemployment compensation agencies began using SSNs to identify workers. and some employers tended to prefer hiring individuals who already possessed an SSN, Social Security Board 1938, 53. So, after a few months, the Bureau began issuing SSNs to anyone who applied. For over 20 years, Bureau field offices assigned SSNs, using blocks of pre-numbered Social Security cards furnished to each office. Office staff simply typed the number holder's name on one of the pre-numbered cards. For replacement cards, field office staff manually typed the SSN and name on a blank card. In 1961, issuance of original SSNs was centralized in Baltimore, but local offices continued to issue replacement cards. In March 1972, SSA began assigning SSNs and issuing cards exclusively from Baltimore via a computer-based system. 8 It was also in 1972 that all applicants for federal benefits were required to have their own SSN.
All right. Now, from there, the whole document goes on to talk about maintaining the records, a lot of really super nerdy jargon, handling Social Security problems, applying for a Social Security number today, requirements to be able to do so, expanding the use of them. This hasn't been updated since 2009, roughly, from what I see. Verifying the Social Security numbers, enhancing the Social Security card, and then a final conclusion and notes. This can be obtained through socialsecurityadministration.gov or ssa.gov/SSB/V69N2/V69N2 key 55.html if you want to read through the whole history of the information. Otherwise, it's just a really long, boring read. But I wanted you guys to get the basic scope of what it is, what it's doing, what it's there for, how it started, all that good jazz. But also to understand that it's also what they're not saying. And I don't know about you, but I didn't hear anywhere in there where it said tax with that number was mandatory. I'm just saying, if I stepped away and I missed something at some point in time, email me, let me know. But I didn't see anything in there where it says under this law, you have to use this and you are taxable as a national or state citizen. I didn't catch that anywhere in there. So we've been making an election. Now, this doesn't mean that for those people who are all got their butts in a bind, if you want to still pay taxes, pay them. And I'm not saying that you can just go, oh, we'll set it, I don't have to pay them and just stop. It's not how it works. You elected to be in, you have to make a revocation to get out. But understand that still yet buying groceries and things in your area, which goes to really actually help your local area, and those taxes you still have to pay unless you get a certificate of exemption from the state, which is something different. It's a different transaction type. You receiving compensation for your labor is tax exempt per the Constitution and the Supreme Law of the Land, which is the Supreme Court, and it's already been ruled on. Unless you make an election, then you can do whatever you want to do. You can also reduce how much you're paying if you know how to do it. Now, I'm not a guru or a legal professional or anything like that. But as a private consultant, there are ways to reduce or eliminate almost every single thing that's out there. All right. So be wise, be careful in everything you do, no matter whose information you get, make sure that you vet it. And ultimately, you will be responsible for your actions. Don't do crazy things. Don't play stupid games and win stupid prizes. I shouldn't say a lot, but a number of individuals out there, these gurus, are trying to soak you for money. How do I know that? Because I've probably lost about $50,000 since I started learning this at around 19, had money to spend on all their little packages and this and that and whatever else. A majority of all this information you guys see here is out there for free. That's why I give you guys like what, 90, 95% of it all the way for free, other than the files I make, my time, my consultations. And I'm not saying that people can't charge what they want for their time, their consultations, but don't let somebody who talks good talk you out of a whole bunch of money. And even the people that did get a lot of money from me or who scammed me in some of these corporations, it's just good business, right? See, if you don't know you've been ripped off, then it's just good business. No, at least that's what they say in their jurisdiction. So if you can detect it, then it's fraud or it's a scam or it's a ripoff. If you go to the next person and get a consultation and they charge you $2,500 and you come to me and I charge you 500, and I've had people tell me this, oh, that guy ripped me off. Well, prove that he did. Just because you can get it from me for cheaper or the internet for free doesn't necessarily mean you've been ripped off. It just means you didn't do your due diligence and shop around enough. See, word magic. It's all in how you use it. So you guys take care. Hopefully you guys have learned something. Don't forget to hit that bell, like, subscribe, and I'm going to make more videos. 'Cause I got more to make. And then somewhere in there I'll be taking a break and getting back into the books, learning some new things. And you'll be seeing me a lot more on my secondary channel, which is the Badwolf Media channel. All right. I'll talk to you guys later.